fabulous, can network with not only people from Massachusetts, across the United States, as contingencies from Japan, China, you name it, they're represented there. But the way this goes is Commonwealth of Massachusetts, our building code.
So the International Energy Code is pushing this new update to the...
No, that's Massachusetts.
Okay, so I'm trying to struggling with, I thought we were talking about this new HERS and the new Massachusetts Energy Code.
Stretch Energy Code, yes.
Okay, how do we get into this here?
But there are two levels of that stretch energy code. There's the one that we are obligated to follow because we're a green community.
Mm-hmm.
And then there's what we call it the stretch code, that you have to vote like at town meeting to adopt. So let's just talk about the code that we would have to follow because we're a green community.
Yeah,
So
okay.
where are we with that?
What has been adopted in the state, but has not clearly gone through the building code.
Okay, so that's the, yeah.
Is a more restrictive HERS rating,
Right.
which is what we typically use on the residential homes. So they have to get tighter.
Right.
So we're in limbo right now. That supposedly got promulgated in the state of Massachusetts to become effective.
What's the
January
two numbers? I mean, what's the old numbers? The 64 to what?
No, it's
The old number of the code, what's the old HRS, what's the new number?
I believe it's 55 to 52.
So the 55 is the new number?
No,
It's the old.
The lower the number is the higher?
right, they're going to net zero. They're trying to get it down.
Okay, so they're going 55 down to 52.
Right.
Okay, I had it backwards.
Yeah.
I thought a higher rating meant a higher number.
And then the hope is, I think 2024, I think push that down to 49. And that's on the base standards. There's then some.
How do you achieve it tighter than what they're already doing now? And what do you do differently physically? Can you list a couple of items at least you do this? I mean, you got triple pane windows, for example, or
Yeah.
do you insulate the basement, or?
Well, now, over the past 5 years from the original stretch code, builders pretty much can't make the rating with a 2x4 construction. Awful lot of new construction is 2x6 construction.
Yep.
An awful lot have gone from fiberglass insulation to spray foam. They are getting the higher efficiencies on particularly the heating and cooling units. They're spending more time, before the builder closes in the wall, they're caulking where the wall system meets the floor. They're doing similar up at the ceiling. So on my side, by the time they reach out to us for the inspection, they have to already know that they're going to be able to provide that certificate. I don't know if a lot of builders hit before they can call us, working with their HERS rater.
So what do? They call in the guy, they test it, then they call you in to certify it or something like that?
No, a lot of the better builders work tightly with the HERS raters. They've gone through a learning curve on how to build and seal a house, particularly since they first adopted the stretch code. So a lot of the bigger builders locally, they're able to pull these off. Some of the guys that are doing one house a year, one house is, every few years, all of a sudden, we didn't realize, that it got this crazy.
I went down and I inspected that new Harbor Master building in the summertime with that split system up in the attic up there.
Yep, the mini split, yep.
And it was very quiet and very comfortable, and it was in the middle of summer up there, and I was amazed. And that was probably with the older codes, I would imagine.
So on the new code that you're saying, even the newer code has not really been implemented fully at this point,
Correct.
right?
There's
And,
an awful, the architects are calling, the builders are calling.
right,
Jack, where are we at?
yeah,
Did we adopt it? Didn't we adopt it?
Right.
What standards do I need?
right.
So, I mean, just in this point in time, we're kind of hanging a little bit in limbo.
Right,
It's gonna
right.
get worked out.
Right.
So at bare minimum, they need to meet this 55
Right.
that we've been going with.
So is it an impossible mountain to get from 55 to 52, or what, are they already there right now?
I've heard numbers anywhere from $3,000 to $30,000+ extra.
Wow, to go that from 55 to 52?
Well, everything is so expensive now that, so,
On what, $1 million house?
yeah, well, everything's $1 million house here.
Yeah, right, that's a starter house, isn't it?
So Jack, just so I understand, back in 2018, when the town of Harwich
Yep,
adopted this green community
Yep.
standard. Okay, so we voluntarily did that.
yep,
So I'm a residential home builder, not commercial, not, you just mentioned federal builders. I'm just a local residential guy. I want to build houses. I submit to you a set of plans. And when I submit those plans to you, does it have to have somewhere in the plans documentation that says we are doing A, B, and C to meet?
They have two options on your submittal to us. They can go, which, there is the prescriptive, which tells you you need a minimum of an R49 in an attic, and, you know, what you can do in the walls and such.
Mhm.
However, now that we're into the stretch, they need to do the SERS rating, which they need to pay to have it done.
Yeah.
Usually, not only that fee, over time, depending on how many houses they built, there's been time and money expended between retraining the builder, you know,
Right,
the framer, and, you know, each of the additional steps.
Okay, but the builder does all that.
Yep,
Are they, I mean, it's required in Harwich that they do that, right?
yep,
Okay.
as is, I don't know, what the average,
Yeah,
pretty substantial across the
Okay,
country.
so in 2018, we adopted new standards that makes new homes more efficient here in
Yep,
Harwich.
yep,
And that's black and white, we adopted
But-
that.
the 2018 standards only applied to new construction. And it did not apply to renovations and additions. But I think the new code
yes.
applies to everything.
Yes, and that has inspectors highly concerned for the townspeople, because the way that that's written, if you add or modify in excess of 1,000 square feet, and a perfect example that building officials are using, you suddenly decide to finish your basement.
Okay, but we're not there yet, right?
That's on what got adopted, that's
Which is-
the 2021 version.
Okay,
Yeah.
so 2021 says that when you modify your home, that you have to meet this.
Right, and just to clarify, so let's suppose I'm finishing my basement.
Yep.
So does that mean my whole house now has to come up to the new rating, or just my basement?
That's,
One of those questions.
yes,
Yeah.
yes. And that's the same thing that we struggle with if you put on an addition, with our 2018,
Mm-hmm,
unless you could seal that addition off from the house.
right.
You know, if you've got a big
Right,
case opening,
right,
there's no
right.
way, so
No.
you were not required.
Right. So these hearings that are coming up, I'm assuming that all of the questions that we have are the same questions that everybody has, and that's what they're going to be looking at.
So is it premature to try to suggest that the town vote for this, or should we wait? I mean, what we're trying.
Well,
get to-
what he's talking about, we don't vote on, it would just happen as soon as they figure it
Yeah,
out.
but aren't we talking about putting a proposal on to go to this higher code?
But there are towns that are doing that, like for Wellfleet, for example, is doing that. I think Falmouth is doing
We're
that.
trying to get input to see if we should do that, right?
Right, and that's why we're talking, you know, but
So should we or shouldn't we? What's your opinion?
yeah,
I think that it's premature on the discussion right now with that, with the unknown variables and, you know, some of the information that I've heard that just, you know, the standard increase from stretch code 18 to stretch code
Right.
21, you know, the builders are spending money
right,
to meet that. And I don't know factually, and in order to bring it to town meeting, you know, I would expect we can get an expert in when the time is right.
right.
What's the real cost that will be associated with
And of course,
these?
the cost of putting it into the building, like making the building more efficient, can be offset by the energy savings that the homeowner would experience over the lifetime of that home. So, I mean, there is a balance there, and
Yep.
it's not just about how much the builders are spending, you know, or,
And this is all tied, I mean, we're talking about energy efficiency, but we haven't talked about heating plants and building, so.
well, the stretch code, I think, is the net zero stretch code, where you couldn't have any fossil fuels in the building.
Because you've been talking about a lot of these gas stoves causing contaminants, and the tighter the buildings get. And if you go to even tighter buildings, they're talking about you should be using an induction stove. And are these new houses all planned with induction stoves? They still have gas stoves. You know what I'm talking about? What's the answer?
There isn't one yet, and it's interesting because the electrical inspector was asking me yesterday, what is in the new stretch energy code, because of a few of the requirements. You need to have the circuit for a car charger.
Yep.
You need to be solar ready,
Yep.
which includes penetrating the roof, which in my opinion, that's crazy.
Yeah, I have
Have
solar, it's all on the outside.
Yeah. Yeah. It makes sense to have that chase for the wires and such, but in my opinion, have it in the attic.
Right.
Then you decide, and, you know, where are they gonna run those wires? You know, why do we randomly wanna be adding an extra puncture to a seal,
Right.
to a roof
Right.
system?
Right.
But, I hadn't heard, but my electrical inspector, through his association, had heard. He says, where are we at with, the requirements in new construction, even if it's a gas, appliance, a gas stove, that he believes that on the electrical side is going to be the requirement to also wire it for, an electric.
Yeah, just
And
like
that's-
you,
You have provision to switch to it if
If
you
you wanted
decide to
to,
do
yeah.
so, but you don't have to have an induction stove to start with. Is that the idea?
I believe so.
Let's get back to what you said about no fossil fuels.
right, that's a stretch code.
Okay, so that's not.
That's not the one
That's on the
we're,
horizon, way off on the horizon.
I mean, it's what Wellfleet and Falmouth are gonna vote on.
And
They're gonna vote so that they actually won't be allowed to heat their homes with oil or gas.
Exactly.
And there are, I think that there are some other towns that are going the other side of that to potentially pull the town out of the stretch energy code.
Yeah, I imagine
Yep.
it really depends on where you are.
So the building departments across the state right now,
We're all over the place and we're in limbo.
and would I be correct in assuming that the building inspectors, the building commissioners like yourself, feel that this is gonna be I'll use the word nightmare, to try to get a handle on it, let alone enforce it in new buildings going forward, as well as modifications going forward? I don't want the words in your mouth.
No,
It's not making your life easier, I'm sure.
well, as with any code change, you know, there's change.
Yeah,
We don't know in black and white what that looks like today. So right now, it's a pain because we don't know.
Did they give you a time frame? Like they're gonna have these listening meetings? Were you told like by June 1st or July 1st or whatever, it will be settled, or?
Well, the interesting thing with
Yeah.
this is for the building code.
Right,
The energy code,
Right.
2021
Yeah.
stretch energy code, I believe through Department of Energy,
Mm-hmm.
was passed, was adopted, went into effect either late December or January 1st.
right.
However, the question on my side, where does my authority come from?
Okay,
Which, that we need the building code to
back you up.
back us up, exactly. And until we get there, we're great.
Mhm.
But let's just take that off. Ultimately, it's gonna get there.
Right, because this was a law that was passed. I mean,
Yeah.
I mean, this is already, it's a done deal. We just had to figure out how we're going to implement it. So it's, I suppose a town could vote to not use the stretch code, but in the end, if the state has mandated that we're net zero by 2050 or whatever, I think the towns are going to lose the option at some point, that these codes are going to be applied across the board. And I think the sooner a town adopts and moves forward with these, the easier it will be, because then it's clear in that town. Like if you're going to build a house in Harwich, you know, as a builder, I would want it very clear. These are the codes that the building inspector and the building commission expects and will enforce.
Right.
It's the nebulous thing that drives people crazy.
Yep.
And so I think that anybody, I mean, the builders can adjust to anything. They just need to know what they're adjusting to.
Yep.
And they have to feel that it's fairly
Yep.
administered across the board to all contractors.
Yep.
You know, and I think,
And there's all levels of that. I don't know, my background, I've only been serving in Harwich for 6 months now.
Mhm.
However, I've been a commissioner for 20 plus
Mhm.
years. My last community, one of the local builders, particularly over the last year, as the energy
Yep.
was moving forward, I loved having conversations with him. He's on, the cutting edge of everything.
Yep.
And,
You mean he's in favor of it?
he's absolutely in favor of it, and he was gonna push his crews, whatever, you put that bottom line number, I'm going way below that.
You know, there was a PBS program on how builders are causing the planet to be much hotter. You know, in North Carolina, they do this all the time. They're building a huge community, so what the first thing they do is they cut down every single tree along here. And I'm noticing that even in Harwich, when all these Eastwood communities, they're building the streets right on 39 here, cut down every single tree on the community, and this all adds to global warming, it causes more energy. Well, I live on Dundee Circle, and there's all trees, but apparently the builders built the houses there, they didn't cut down all the trees.
Yeah.
And I don't know why, they said, well, all this pavement we put in here, they need to coat it with a sun reflecting
Yeah.
coating so that it doesn't cause so much more heat around here. They build the communities, they cause them to be more energy, instead of having the trees to prevent the sun from heating up, and the pavement, they pave everything, and it's like they're doing it all opposite to what they're supposed to be doing.
well, I'm not sure that tree cutting is included in
No, it isn't, but that's,
the building code.
but that's the bigger picture
I
here.
know, yeah.
But it is good with the provision of, for the solar ready.
Right,
Because hopefully that's putting a little onus on them to, well, if we're gonna put it there, it
at
doesn't
least
take a
face the
lot.
house right.
Yeah. And it doesn't take a lot.
No.
And they
no.
can make them attractive on,
Right.
going up the street. And sometimes it looks good when you.
Right, everything's a little different
Yeah, we're
and
not
not
in
just
the
cookie cutter.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Well, so the bottom line is, it's a work in progress.
Yep.
And,
So, with, I think the overall question, should we be making proposals and
Right.
moving it forward? Just through my knowledge, I think that we need to have the code firmly in place, what is it saying, and, you know, what is it going to require? And,
What's
So
your
again,
feeling
you're
on
talking
that
about the
sort of thing?
2021 energy code now, is that what you're
Yeah.
talking about? And when that is firm, and when do you think that will be firmly in place? I mean, frame.
the very earliest would be late summer.
So maybe next year we'll think about it? Is that a possibility?
Yeah.
So-
Wait a minute, there's energy code and then there's building code.
Right.
The building code
But
is one you
they're
saying that-
connected.
He's
They're
talking about,
connected, they're
he's
connected,
talking about the energy code. He's not talking about the building.
I thought he said that the HERS is already in place, but that the building codes are what needs to be brought along with it.
I thought he
So,
said
so
energy
it's,
code.
so it's the building code that you're waiting to get a
To give
firm
me
understanding.
authority
Right.
to,
Require it.
exactly.
Okay, so those building codes, you see that by later this summer, you think? Or
Sadly,
this
they've been
year?
working on this update for a year and a half.
is this basically the state that
Yeah.
takes that amount of
Yeah.
time to just,
Yeah.
Well, it's a different organization. I mean, the Department of Energy, they're done. I mean, they
Yeah,
put,
yeah.
they
That's what
put
it
out
sounds like, yeah.
their requirements. It was voted on in the Beacon Hill, and it's a done deal. But what you're saying is that that's great, but how is that going to be enforced? And are the building inspectors, or do we have a whole separate energy inspector? It's like,
Yeah.
which is
well, this has gone on
Yeah.
since the beginning of time. Somebody
Yeah.
sets lofty goals
Yep.
and says to you,
yeah, do
I
it.
set them, you make it happen.
Yeah.
And it sounds like the building departments are the guys that have
Yeah.
to make it happen, and you gotta get together, put your heads together,
Right.
and come up with a set of
Right.
codes to be able to comply with
Yeah.
what the energy.
And that's just taking time.
And that takes.
But just an important fact with that, with the energy code being vetted through the Commonwealth, being adopted. I don't know if it was last year or 2 years ago, the authoritative board on the state building code is the BVRS, Board of Regulations and Standards, which up until 1 or 2 years ago, there was 11 members served on the board. That makeup was a building commissioner from a city, building commissioner from a town, registered architect, structural engineer, a representative of unions, representative of fire department. So that's a missing 5, but a very, very spread out diverse. 1 or 2 years ago, they changed the composition of the board. They added 4 new members. All 4 are from the energy side.
Yeah,
So that's their commitment.
right.
There's good and bad with that. As I just laid out to you, very diverse
Right.
over, all of the trades.
Right.
And currently, we're a little energy heavy. However,
Right.
at this point in time, that should be a good thing. Because if we're struggling getting the codes through, and you need a majority vote, and you just went from 11 person to 15 people, and 4 right out of the gate are on the energy side,
Yeah,
that should help move this
right.
forward in a timely manner.
Yeah. So if somebody came to you and wanted to build a house in Harwich, what code are they held to? I mean,
Currently, the 2018,
for
Which
both
is-
energy and for building?
yes.
Yeah,
And for remodels,
same thing, yeah,
it's still 2018
yeah.
in both cases.
Actually, I backpedal on that.
Mhm.
I believe our base codes currently are off of 2015. It's the 2018 energy, but that got adopted into the code.
Mhm. Right. We've been doing that. When we were a green community, we were obligated
Yep,
to meet that.
yep.
Yeah, it's interesting. It's a process. I think ultimately, we believe it's a good thing to have better energy efficiency and less greenhouse gases, but it's the the devil's in the details,
Yeah.
you know, and
Yeah,
how to,
I still have trouble wrapping my head around the no fossil fuels, because that's telling me that, you know, to power that house, that it's all solar panels or,
well, electricity, it's called electrification, and that is the number one goal that Massachusetts has right now, is electrification. And the DPU is also putting a lot of pressure on the utilities, like Eversource and Unigrid and people like that, to modernize the grid. Because if I could snap my fingers and we were all electrified at home, the grid wouldn't support it.
Right,
So
Right.
it's a double, you know, all of these things have to happen simultaneously in order to go forward. But at some point, you gotta just cut the fossil fuels off. And you gotta figure out how to do it, because it's a pretty dire situation right
Right.
now.
and there's pros and cons with that. My last community, we had a peaker power plant there that would go on high demands,
what time was that?
Medway.
What kind of peaker plant was it?
They installed, while I was there, they upgraded, there's 2 Boeing 777 engines in there.
So they're jets.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
It's a
putting
gas
out-
turbine you're talking about.
Yeah, yeah, so they're putting out 250 kilowatts, I believe.
Megawatts. Yeah.
Megawatts,
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
Yep.
And the most recent proposal that we were working on prior to my departure, there is a proposal for a large bank battery storage on the adjacent property, which it works out great because the grid's coming right through there. And that proposal will also be 250 megawatt. But town tabled that for a year, with all of the unknowns, with the
Right.
fire, with the possible contaminants,
Right,
and they've been studying that. They made it past the year that the town put the moratorium on. I am aware that that project has gone to the state, for permitting through the state, and then they'll come
Yeah.
back to the town.
Is that the battery?
Yeah.
I mean, there's gonna have to be a lot of different, there's no one silver bullet that's gonna save us from,
No,
every community is gonna have to sort of look at their
Yep.
strengths and weaknesses, they're gonna have to make the adjustments and do what they need to do to comply, so that in the end, the whole state is net zero by 2050.
yeah. But
And it's not
the
going to.
infrastructure.
Right, but the DPU it's a new board, and they're working very hard to hold, like, Eversource and those people
Yeah,
Well,
accountable for
I mean,
upgrades.
Eversource has been, Eversource more than 10 years ago, because I've been retired for 7, so maybe back 15, 17 years ago, they recognized there's a lot of money to be made in updating the transmission grid.
Right.
So when you're looking at the big right-of-ways, the one that runs right down the bike path, the whole length of the Cape, that's the transmission grid. Well, we spent billions and billions and billions of dollars upgrading the transmission grid when other utilities weren't. So you saw out west in California where PSE&G had 100-year-old hooks that were going through and caused a fire and got sued for billions of dollars. They weren't doing it. Eversource was, but people, I define the grid as the transmission grid. You know,
Right.
that links all the power plants, all the big substations together. They've done a good job with that, at least in Massachusetts, Connecticut, New Hampshire, where Eversource is. But now, when you're looking at all this smaller stuff where people want to put solar panels in, and we're talking about it, and we have to have Eversource come out, and they have to look and say whether or not
Right.
they have to do something. That's more like the distribution system that supplies the power up and down the streets. That's where a lot of time and money has to be spent. And that's regulated in a much different way, whereas transmission, it's a federal regulatory board, and you are guaranteed you're gonna make 13% of your money. And our big shots said,
Why not?
why not? This is a freaking home run. But when it comes to the distribution side, you just mentioned the DPUC, they meet on this, and the utilities ask for rate hikes and whatnot to be able to handle the distribution side of the house and do those upgrades. And I'm not aware, I don't know where Eversource or any of the
Right.
utilities are on doing that now. I think that that's where, across the whole country, like you just said, if you were to electrify everything and everybody had electric cars, it wouldn't work because the system's not there to provide
But
that.
little by little, you know, it's
Yeah,
it's like
absolutely,
a spider web. I mean, it all like has to come
If you're
together.
not moving, you're not gonna get there.
Exactly.
Well-
You know, we've got big wind projects coming on
They're
board.
they're digging up all the streets in Hyannis to run all these power lines. And every time you drive down there, you can see the ditches all over the place. They're working on all that stuff for those wind turbines and
Yeah.
bringing the lines in there. All the towns are down there.
Mhm.
Well, I think you have sort of answered our question. You know, we're not quite ready for prime time yet.
Should we
Um,
re-invite you in a
Yep.
year?
Yep.
Yeah, we'll have you come
Absolutely.
back in a year and you can.
Yep. Yep.
And then we'll readdress it.
Right down the hall. So
That's
let's-
right, yeah.
Let's say 6 months, we'll have you back.
Yeah, I
in.
mean, any week or month that,
Yeah.
that you're in here and,
Yeah.
you know, you got anything,
Yep.
shoot across and,
And if you have an idea on how this committee could assist you,
Right.
you know, going forward, let us know,
Yeah.
because, I mean, it
And-
sounds like something that
yep,
we're on the same side.
yeah, definitely, and,
And
you know,
hopefully, you know, I know there's the contractors and then the workers have to be trained in all of this.
Oh, yeah.
You know, and I hear that it's contractors having a hard time getting skilled labor. My husband was a heating and plumbing contractor for years. And, you
mhm.
know, at 70 years old, he gets solicitations in the mail to come back to work, which he's not
I'll
gonna
tell you right
do.
now, that if,
But-
you know, that there's certain jobs out there that if my kids didn't really want to go to college,
Yeah,
there's a lot of those jobs that make way more than most college graduates make.
Yeah.
And people turned up their nose years ago, some of those people are starting their own businesses and making a couple
Yeah.
$100,000 a year easy.
Yeah.
no, but yeah, so very interesting. So we will keep our eye open.
Perfect.
And thank you so much for coming
Yeah,
in.
thank you
It
very
was
much.
nice meeting you
Yeah.
all, sorry for holding you up a little bit
Oh,
there.
Don't worry about it.
Have a great afternoon.
Thank you.
Thanks, Jack.
Enjoy the solar heat out there.
Yeah. All right, so, well, we can take that off the list. So if everything is so up in the air at this point,
Yeah, that's
for
what it
us to
sounds
go crazy trying to adopt the stretch code,
like.
when they don't even know what they're doing with the regular stretch code, or the updated version of the stretch code.
I'm curious.
What did he really say about remodeling, though? I'm not sure.
Well, because we're still using the previous code, or we haven't changed anything really, that it doesn't apply to remodeling.
So
the-
remodeling is the old 2015 code, or what?
2018,
Okay.
yeah, as far as energy goes.
I thought the 2018 didn't apply to remodeling.
It doesn't.
So then.
It only but the new code, the 2021, applies to remodeling. And that's the one he's saying they still are discussing, and
I just have no idea how they could do it. You come to Harwich and see some of these 150-year-old homes that are quaint, beautiful, historic homes, and I want to add a little family room off the back of that house, and now you're telling me that I'm gonna have to redo my whole 150-year-old
well,
house.
and that's not gonna happen, and
Yeah,
so
exactly, it's not.
it's, they're going, what they have to come up with are the processes for getting the exemptions,
That's-
you know, and that's part of the whole shtick, you know, it's like, at what point do they have to go to your 150-year-old home and say, well, you've done as much as you can,
So
you know?
the remodeling is in process for 2021?
Right,
Is that-
right. So
Is that the
so-
way to put it? I'm trying to understand it.
You don't have to put any details in there, just that we met with
Yeah.
him, and the newer stretch codes are still being worked on.
Okay.
And in 6 months, we'll have Jack back, and he can let us know where they are at that point. Now, the towns, I didn't want to say it while he was here, but the towns, he talked about a contractor that was on board, you know, and really wanted to
His
make.
previous job.
Right, in his previous job, he worked with a contractor who was very forward-thinking, and he was trying to meet or beat, you know, the required HERS ratings and all of that. That's the exception, not the rule. And so I think that the towns really do have to try to hold contractors to the code.
Well, I mean, that's the
You know.
whole concept of the building
Yeah.
department. It
Right.
isn't just that it's not gonna blow down, in a hurricane.
Right,
It's all codes.
it's gotta be
I mean,
all
when you build
codes,
something,
yeah,
there's
yeah.
a reason you got codes, is you
Right.
can buy all of them, not most of them are sold.
Right. So anyway, so hopefully that will work itself out, that we will, because we're a green community, that will be our code, that 2021 will be our code. Moving forward, we don't have a choice in that unless we resigned from green communities or something.
I'll stay in touch with Jack.
Yeah,
Over,
yeah.
over the summer and see.
Right.
And maybe, I wouldn't mind going to one of these meetings.
Right, well, they're probably they're probably gonna be Zoomed, you know, they're probably, you know, if you could check with him,
Yeah.
get on the email list, and when those listening sessions come up,
Yeah.
you know, I'm pretty sure they'll probably just be Zooming them, and,
I've got no problem with getting in the middle of that
Yeah.
and seeing what they're
Yeah.
doing. Oh, something that's kind of
Mhm.
a tangent to this. A number of meetings back, you wanted me to find out about the gas moratorium. That gas
Oh, yeah, yeah,
moratorium was lifted in 2019.
okay, yeah. I kind of remembered that, but I wasn't,
I couldn't find an official thing from the state, but I found official things from a number of contractors, because they're the ones who get the work.
right,
And they said,
right.
hey, the moratorium's lifted, and it was
Right, right.
2019, so.
All right, so let's get back to the agenda. Citizens Energy Academy, it went well, we missed you, but it was only modestly attended. But you know what? The people that came loved it. And the people in the community center were telling me that people were talking about it and, you know, that type of thing. So I think it was worth doing, and maybe we think about doing it again next year, you know.
And I don't know what to do to get more people to come, because everything you just said was 100% right. I mean, the people that were there, I mean, they were engaged, they asked good questions, and if you'd had 50 people there, they would have walked away saying the same thing.
Yep.
But it's getting to 50 versus
Right.
the 10, you know. and-
Yep. Well, I did it through COA because it was easy to do it. Maybe
thought it was
we
a
do
good
it,
idea.
we do it through, maybe we do it through a different, maybe do it the community center side, or we do it, we find a different way to do it.
Did you try, like, putting an ad in the Harwich Chronicle?
Oh, we had plenty of advertising. It was in the Chronicle, it was in the COA newsletter. It wasn't just advertised, I had a whole article about it. I got interviewed by, I forget his name, but anyway, so we had plenty of advertising. That wasn't the issue. It was just that people, there's a lot of stuff that people have to think about. And energy is not a natural thing for most people to be thinking about. Some of the people that came in clutching their electric bills didn't even know how to read their bill. This one poor lady, I looked at her bill, I said, "You're not even on Cape Light Compact," and she was paying way more than Cape Light Compact. She didn't even know, you know, how to figure it out. She was just shocked, you know. She doesn't remember switching. She doesn't, you know. So anyway, yeah. But I think it was worthwhile. We'll talk about it again for next year. So did everybody do their conflict of interest stuff? Perfect. You don't have to print them out. It'll just go straight to the town hall. I printed mine because I wanted to show you.
I had mine here. I don't
Yeah,
know.
but
I did
as
too.
long as you did it, they automatically.
There it is, right there, I
Yeah.
got it, okay.
Yeah, they automatically tell the town. They automatically tell the town. Good. Roseanne's not here today, but she did tell me that she is resigning from the committee.
How come?
You know, I think she's,
Overwhelmed.
yeah, you know, she doesn't have a car. She's, you know, has some physical disabilities. I think she, you know, feels like she doesn't want to do it anymore.
So, was something, conversation about some new member possible?
So, do you remember the guy with the dog that went to our seminars?
Yep.
Had the big friendly dog?
Did you want me to put that in the minutes, by the way, that she's resigning, or not?
let's wait for her next month, hopefully
Is she
she's
gonna
gonna,
formally write a letter, or what is she
I don't know,
gonna?
I would assume you have to tell the selectmen that you're,
Otherwise, they keep showing your name up on the Harvard
right,
Energy thing.
right. So, but I'll let her officially announce it next month, but, because she'll stay till June, I think we go June to June, so she'll stay until the end of her term. All right, but the guy that came, he came to every single energy seminar, he was very interested, I think his name is Patrick. When Roseanne officially resigns, I will reach out to him.
Do you know his name?
Yeah, he gave me his card. His name, I forget what his last name.
So we can't ask him before she resigns?
No. Anyway, I have his card in here somewhere, so we will discuss that, but he seemed pretty interested, so at least we have that one person. If you know anybody else who you think might be interested, you can, have them, at least fill out the application and do that.
I wonder why she's resigning.
I just think she's too much.
I know that when I look at all the emails that she sends on all the different
She's
topics,
involved in a lot of stuff.
she's involved in a lot of stuff, so I mean,
And I think she has felt that she doesn't have as much expertise in this area, whereas she feels more confident in some of the other groups that she works with. So,
I'll never write a book, but I've thought about writing a book. I went to get an environmental degree, and I've got strong opinions on the fact that there's multiple ways to address environmental issues, whether or not it's education, whether or not it's litigation, whether or not it's in people writing the laws, whether or not it's in the scientists that come up with the solutions to all this kind of stuff. But one of the ones that really kicked everything off is more activism.
right.
And they've changed their way. You saw the people wearing the white suits and the respirators marching with signs in front of the nuclear plants. Well, that gets you on the news, but then they start to realize, well, okay, that gets you on the news, but it's not helping you with your cause as much. So the Sierra Club and all these organizations, they realize that if they go down the path of litigation and working with the agencies in the state, we had a permit to be able to discharge water in Holyoke at one of the plants I worked at. Well, what they did was they had a problem with a plant in Salem, Mass. Well, they didn't just have people demonstrating with Salem, they had people actively lobbying to get it so that you couldn't even have a water discharge permit in the state of Massachusetts, because ours was a temporary permit that was 30 years old, but they realized that demonstrations wasn't getting it done. But if you start going to the state meetings and getting the lawyers involved, all of a sudden you were accomplishing things. But it all starts with activism.
Right.
And when I get all her emails, she's about the best I've seen as far as being active in all these things, and I give her lots of credit. I might not agree with some of them,
Right.
but I really appreciate the time
She's very active, and she's, and I think that's,
Maybe we just need to encourage her to stay, do you think?
Well,
I trust people to know their own, and I did email her and,
I agree.
said, we would be very sad to see her go, but I respected her decision. So this whole EV charging station, so we had a meeting, I can't remember, weeks ago, where, remember how we sent in our request for Eversource to give us a,
Didn't you talk to the Board of Selectmen about that?
I talked to Joe Powers, and Joe said, see, Eversource.
The board brought it up though, didn't it? There was a discussion.
We're getting there. So the Eversource came back with some questions. We sent in the application. Eversource asked questions. Of course, because we didn't go with EvCon, there was nobody who could answer the questions, which is what I told them in the first place. So they didn't know what to do. So I said, if you
Who
don't,
sent the application in?
the
Powers?
Powers, yeah.
Okay.
With Julie Kavanaugh, the two of them sent it in. And, they were very insistent that we do not, at the time that happened, that we do not engage officially with like EvCon or anything like that. Great. So what was supposed to happen was Joe was supposed to get in touch with EvCon and make an arrangement, a very narrowly
Small proposal.
small proposal on just answering Eversource's questions. And then sitting down and coming up with some bids, like a RFP
Yep.
for the rest of the work. And
Wasn't
I've,
that all in the Chronicle about the meeting? I thought I read all that stuff in the Chronicle.
then there's just this, and remember, this happened weeks ago. Just this past Monday, they finally brought it up at Board of Selectmen. So, that's how slow this whole process is going. But it's going.
Did they answer the question about whether or not you could bring EvCon in for $2,000, $5,000, whatever, a small amount? Did they approve that, or?
Well,
did
Joe
they
felt
increase
he
that
didn't need.
amount? The Board of Selectmen's
the-
to rule on it, that he
Right,
had-
but he wanted to inform them, he figured he had the money to do this very small thing.
He wasn't asked for permission.
Right, he was,
telling them.
right,
Well,
And I asked Julie to let me know what was going on, but I haven't heard back from her, so.
What is, usually, they'll have a limit, whether.
Yeah, I forget what that
whether it's
is, yeah,
5,000 or
yeah.
100, whatever it is
Right.
in each town, that, and I would think that for $5,000, they'd be more than happy to write up a small, request for proposal and answer the questions that Eversource asked.
Right.
For 5,000, I would expect, but.
Right, and I'm hoping that that's all being
Okay.
taken care of, and that,
So the wheels are turning
Yeah.
not as fast as
Yeah.
you would like. So-
right, exactly, and we always know that anything with the town is gonna take forever, so I am waiting to hear back from Julie, as to where we are with that. I don't know yet. I don't know if they've already contacted EvCon. I don't know any of that, so, but that was what they were gonna do, is have a small proposal for EvCon to answer the Eversource questions about citing the original location that we thought might work in front of the Chamber of Commerce is not going to work. They would have to be towards the back of the schoolhouse parking lot.
Is there a reason?
The wires,
Oh,
Yeah.
there's something that Eversource.
right, the Eversource
Okay.
There was
recommended,
just something in the news just yesterday about this, that they're gonna go with lower pollution levels, which mean that they have to have more electric vehicles by 2027, and they said, and the thing that's gonna have to be driven with this is EV charging stations, because they can't get the electric vehicles unless people can charge them someplace. And you can
it's
get-
sort of the chicken and the egg, you're gonna pay for an electric
Yeah, and
vehicle,
It's
or,
all been in the news.
Right.
I mean,
well, in Massachusetts, it will be illegal to sell new internal combustion engines after 2030. You can buy used ones, but there will be no more new internal combustion
It's only
engines.
6 years from now.
Exactly, that's what I
Yeah,
keep telling people. So, anyway, so that's we're waiting to hear back on the progress, but it's
but
it's
It
moving.
was right in the news,
Yeah.
just yesterday or the day before, I remember hearing about it, where they're talking about this entire pollution requirements, and the way they're gonna get there is to have more EV vehicles by 2027.
Right.
They're talking about a fleet total, so the percentage has to be higher
Right.
of electric vehicles.
And
in order
it
to
makes
meet
a lot
this
of, and for Cape Cod in particular, more than half of our CO2 that the Cape produces is transportation.
Really?
Yep. It's not, because we have very little manufacturing, so it's all transportation. That's why
Yes,
it's,
I guess it does make sense, I
Yeah.
mean, yeah.
so that's why it's
And
such a big
The way
push.
they're doing that Sagamore Bridge.
Oh, my
I came
God.
back on Palm Sunday, luckily I came over the Bourne Bridge,
Yeah.
And I'm looking at this, it's back about 10 miles back to try to get off the Cape on a Sunday night. It's in early April, there's not even nice weather here. What's it gonna be like during the summer if they're?
Well, they're stopping Memorial Day weekend, they're done.
Okay.
You know, they're not doing it over the summer.
They need to be building another bridge. It's
They're
all
trying.
backwards.
I used to manage projects like that,
Yeah.
and they don't let you go for, I was shocked that on Easter weekend, that they were actually working, because the state used to oversee us and said, "No, you won't be out there. You absolutely won't be out there, because we're not gonna have a 10-mile backup that people are gonna be blaming the government for. So you
yeah.
are not working on this weekend."
But the only way they can get done what they need to
Is
get
by
done,
working 24 hours a day.
24/7,
To be done by Memorial Day.
to be
weekend.
done enough so they can reopen the bridge.
Yeah, I
You
don't
know,
know
so-
what they're doing, because they've taken all the asphalt out, and you can see all the rebar underneath.
Well, it's rusting, you know, I mean,
Yeah, but that's what I'm trying to figure out, because I
Are
see
they
all
replacing the
all the
rebar?
roads removed.
Are they replacing the rebar?
That's the question I have.
Probably.
I don't know if you can, because it's already
Seems like it'd be
it's
taking the bridge
pre-stretched and
apart.
whatnot, and if you start cutting rebar and replace it,
who knows?
that's why I'm
But
saying, I'm not sure exactly, but.
Yeah. Anyway, if you want to go over the bridge, if you want to leave the Cape, you have to plan ahead. Like we had to, my husband had a medical thing in Dartmouth on Monday morning at 6 o'clock. We left Sunday night and stayed in a hotel.
Wow.
And we went to Bourne Bridge, and it was still backed up for 2 miles at the Bourne Bridge. It was backed up 10 miles at Sagamore, but see, everybody's switching over to Bourne. And so that's getting more and more congested.
So what exit do you get off of Route 6 to get there?
So what I did is I get off at the old exit 5.
That far back?
And then I take Race Lane down to 28, take 28 to 151, 151 to MacArthur Boulevard, and come in that way.
So you go all the way down to 28 and come back up then, to the Bourne Bridge?
Yeah. But up 151, I don't go all the way to Falmouth. I mean, but anyway, I don't plan on leaving the Cape anytime soon. So, but we did have to do that this past Monday. It was ridiculous. Discussion for priorities for the coming year. Probably should wait till we have Jackie, but be thinking about that. Be thinking about the kinds of things that a small committee like we are should be doing. You know, do what? Could we pick up? We can't do everything. You know, we just don't have the bandwidth for that.
Maybe we need to get that person in that is keeping track of whether we're making this 20% energy reduction, that we're supposed to be keeping track of that, aren't we?
Yep.
I mean, that's one of the things, you know, for the green communities, we're supposed to be,
By the end of the 5 years,
when is the 5 years up?
18, 19, 21, next year.
So are we close to that, or are we not close to that, or?
Well, I don't know, and I will,
Didn't we try to get an answer? And
right,
couldn't get
it's
an
very
answer?
nebulous, yeah.
Well, shouldn't we get an answer somehow?
I'll see what I can do as far as checking with Cape Light
And
Compact.
then if we're not gonna get to the 20%, what are we gonna do about it, you know?
Something that we haven't talked much about since I've been here. We tend to talk about more energy issues, but when Carol Ridley came and talked about that Pleasant Bay Alliance,
Mm-hmm.
she was pretty good. I
Mhm.
thought that was a pretty good
Yep.
presentation. It was forward to me, I knew nothing about it. But, I mean, we're called Energy and Climate Action Committee, so
Mm-hmm.
with what they're doing for Pleasant Bay, do we want to spend time on issues that contribute to, you know, water level rising, and what would we do here in the town
Right.
of Harwich?
Well, if you notice on the next bullet point here was which I was unable to, I think Roseanne sent it out. I was unable to do the webinar, but it was a webinar on resiliency and vulnerability. And I know the town has done some research on that. We have gotten a grant to raise a few of our lower lying roads to lift them, you know, above floodplain. So we are doing a little of that, but maybe that's something that we could do a little more research on, is our preparedness. you know, I mean, climate change is going to happen even if we stop using fossil fuels tomorrow. There's the residual CO2 and everything is going to be with us for a very long time. So we have to prepare. The town has to be ready for higher sea levels, for bigger storms, for more flooding. Did you see in Fort Lauderdale they had 24 inches of rain in an hour? How does that happen? It's like somebody dumping a bucket on.
That's part of the thing they were talking about.
It flooded the whole airport.
All these farmers out west have to
They're flooded.
Their farms are getting flooded, and it's washing away the soil.
And then they're in a drought, you know.
So they have to figure out a way to not plow the land, and they leave it, they just cut a line in the ground and put the seeds in, and they don't spend all the time plowing it, making the soil loose, because then it goes away and washes because all these big storms are coming. So they have to develop a different whole method of farming, otherwise we're all gonna go hungry. And they're getting these massive rainstorms that are washing all the dirt away, but anybody that's not plowing the land is not getting all washed away.
Well, no-till agriculture.
That's what it's called, no-till agriculture, yes. So it involves the whole lifestyle of everything, and because.
Well, and for us here,
and
you
like
know.
in California, they had, for years, the Indians used to do these burns and control all the undercover, and then now they're getting all these big storms, big fires, because then all the underbrush is all there, very fertile for burning, and now they're adapting some of these Indian ways of controlled burns to control the underbrush so that it doesn't get these big forest fires, you know. These were things that they knew for 1,000 years, and now they don't know it anymore.
The Forestry Department, Department of the Interior have been arguing for decades about controlled burns, and, you know, lumber companies think it's crazy that you don't come in and take all the trees out for lumber before you burn, because they want to make money off from taking the trees before. You know, but they've been arguing about that for decades.
Well, they don't want to take the trees out, they just want to control the underbrush and the thing.
Well, for us here on the Cape, you know, our biggest issue that we're going to have to deal with is sea level rise. And we have a lot of infrastructure very, very close to the water. And every town needs to think about what you're going to do. Like, you know, look at our beaches, Red River Beach.
Life's there right now.
Yep, I mean, it's like this wide. The parking lot, the beach, and then it's got the marsh behind it. I mean, that beach wants to move. It wants to move towards the marsh, but we've got infrastructure there. How much is the town of Harwich willing to pay? How much are the taxpayers willing to pay to artificially maintain the beaches through groins and sand replenishment and all those other things that you do? And that's a question that the town has to deal with.
Yeah, you have to have a good argument for spending lots of money. And I have to say, you know, I've got friends that are way over here on the left, friends way over here on the right. And the ones on the right would be telling me, you're full of crap, the sea level's not rising, you could have an iceberg the size of Rhode Island break off and melt. You know, it's gonna be 1 inch and you're raising a whole world about nothing. But you need to have the information and the facts to back up your argument. So you gotta be able to say, you know, not what some Hollywood actor said, but this is what came from the state of Massachusetts, and we're gonna plan for it based upon this, and this is the number. So if the number is 2 feet, how does that affect Red River Beach? Well, it's gonna cause this, this, and this. So starting today, we're gonna start doing A, B, and C.
Town of Orleans, years ago, looked at Nauset Beach, and they said, this is not gonna last. Because the town of Orleans, they had their, like the beach department and all of that, they had a building right there in the parking lot. There was a clam shack there, Liam's. There was a lot of infrastructure there. And they actually came up with a plan within like 15 years of eliminating all the infrastructure on that beach. Liam's washed out. I mean, that wasn't a plan. And once it washed out, the town said, nope, no more permanent structures there, we're doing food trucks. And so now they do food trucks. And just this year, they built a brand new recreation beach department on the hill above the beach. And they've decommissioned the building that was on the beach, and they will eventually take it down.
Well, I used to stay on that Nauset Knoll motor lawn.
Yeah, yeah.
And I used to stay there every fall.
Yeah.
And they couldn't take down that motel.
That's on the hill, though. Yeah, but
They didn't take down the
no,
hotel.
no, because that's protected, because that's high up. The restrooms, you know, they'll probably have to move those at some point, you know, further back.
As long as you have restrooms,
Yeah.
people are happy.
Yeah. So, I mean, but this takes years of planning. Because if you don't plan for it, a catastrophic event happens, like a very large hurricane comes through and comes up through Nantucket Sound and hits Harwich. I mean, Red River Beach will take care of itself. I mean, it'll just be a marsh. You know, so there have to be. Now, we did get the grant to raise some of the roads that had already been deemed in jeopardy and did flood on high tides.
Who went out and appropriated the grants?
That came from the state.
But
This,
somebody from Harwich had to ask for the money? Or
I
not?
would assume
Or
that,
the state just gave it to the town of Harwich?
well, I think it came through the Cape Cod Commission. Because the Cape Cod Commission did a study on, you know, did the vulnerability studies for each of the towns.
So the Cape Cod Commission is made up from people from all the towns?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So anyway, that step at least happened. And, but it doesn't always happen. They were trying to raise the 124 as it goes past Long Pond towards Brewster. It
Yeah.
runs parallel with the bike trail there.
Yep.
You know, like here's the lake, here's the road.
Yep.
You know, and so that gets a lot of flooding. And so the state had proposed redoing that section of road to make it less vulnerable, but the residents shot it down because they wouldn't have had any front yards anymore, you know, because they would have had to expand the road. And so, you know, sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. So something like vulnerability, like what we're doing to prepare for the changes that are coming, and what, you know, and how we can, and that could be like a topic for our, maybe next year, our energy workshops are not just about electricity or energy, maybe they are more about vulnerability and what's being done, how do we, you know, how does a town even know what their vulnerabilities are, programs to address it, you know, that type of thing. And maybe by next year, we'll be able to maybe have a workshop on the new building codes, you know, and help people. Hopefully they'll be settled by then, and we'll be able to help people with that. So anyway, be thinking of stuff like that.
You know, I've got no problem reaching out to Eversource if we ever wanted to have another class, you know,
Yep.
and have actually a representative from Eversource come. I still, most of my friends are retired, but there's still a couple around that I could probably reach out to if we thought it would be of interest.
I would, you know, it might be interesting to hear somebody talk about grid modernization, grid mod, you know, and where are they, you know, where do they see it going? Do they feel the DPU, the board, there's 3 people on the DPU, Department of Public Utilities. The 3 people that were there in the Baker administration were very, very pro-utility,
Oh, they were, okay.
very pro-utility. And so, you know, what Eversource wanted, pretty much Eversource got. They were very suspicious of Cape Light Compact and all the other aggregators, and really were very resistant to anything
I
they.
don't understand why. I thought that was, when you explained it all to me, I'm like, how did you ever accomplish this? Because getting 2 towns to agree on something is a nightmare. Getting that many towns, I'm
yeah,
like, holy
yeah,
crap, that
yeah.
was impressive.
But I have been told, like, you weren't there, but our last seminar, the end of March, Julian Sear was there. And I talked to him,
She really likes Julian Sear.
yeah, you know, he's a
I've never met him.
flamboyant kid, but
Oh, okay.
yeah, he's very keyed in to Cape Cod. He was born and raised here, he understands it, he is young, very young, and is really who we need now, you know, because he has no trouble understanding climate change, no trouble, you know, getting on board with this kind of thing, because pretty much people in his generation do, you know. But anyway, he said that there, of those 3 commissioners at the DPU, 2 are new, that from the Healy administration appointed them. They are very pro aggregators, very, and we saw that at Cape Light Compact, things that we'd been struggling to get through, the DPU, all of a sudden happened, you
Really,
know?
this quickly?
Yeah, you know, and I
Wow.
think, you know, and we hope that more things will,
Because that was a question I was gonna ask earlier, would be, with the new Healy administration, is this gonna be a boon for issues we have here, or is it gonna just be business as
well,
usual?
the Healy administration is very much on board with the new climate plan.
Yep.
You know, and very much is supporting the legislation and is very much interested in getting that implemented,
Mhm.
understanding that it's going to take a while, but they're very much behind that. I think the bottom line for most towns is it's expensive. And we were told there's a lot of money out there. It just, the mechanism for getting the money out to the towns hasn't really been finalized, you know, there. So for example, let's suppose a town wants to apply for, you know, money to implement, you know, preparedness for climate change. You know, let's suppose we want to raise a couple more roads, or we want to move a groins or something. We should be able to apply to someplace. Is it going to be through the mass energy? Is it going to be through, you know, what organization in the state is going to be that place that towns can go to get this money to implement these climate initiatives that the towns are coming up with? Nobody knows that yet. But it's going to happen. It's like he said. I mean, it'll all get worked out, and even that will get worked out.
I think we have to approve the minutes from last meeting.
Oh, yeah, we didn't do that yet. So I have them here. Very nice job. I don't see anything I would change.
Yeah, no one got back to me, they changed.
Yeah, they looked fine to me. So all in favor of approving the minutes?
Aye.
Aye. It was unanimous. So the two of you, these need to be posted. You need to send them to that email. Have you been doing that?
No, Charlie sent something to me, but I couldn't make it happen as far as posting the ones that I did over the last few months. So-
I'll do it.
Yeah, so just send this in.
It's just a particular email, you send them to this website, and then they're automatically posted there. You
Yes,
can go back and look at any previous meeting minutes.
Tell you what, I'll go back and check my email and
Just
try and
look on the
try
website
again.
of Harwich and see if you find your meeting minutes in there.
Okay.
Put in the Harwich Energy Committee,
Okay,
and then put on the meeting minutes for a certain day, and see if you can read them on there.
okay.
If you can't find them, I'll do it, just send me an email and tell me to do it, okay?
Yeah.
Okay, I'll give that a shot
Yeah.
this week and get that in there.
yeah, all right, so because the agenda and the minutes, we're obligated to have post. All right, so I go back to work May 8th, so I can't make a 3 o'clock meeting anymore. So we discussed this, Charlie, if you remember.
I remember.
Meeting at 5:30, because I can just go straight from work here. And we said that was okay. The
That just
catch,
happens to be my anniversary, but that's, we'll have to go out to dinner later.
we'll make a very quick meeting. But here's what we have to, because Roseanne is no longer going to be in charge of the agenda. So I was hoping that Jackie would be here, hoping that she could take over that role. But since she isn't, I will take care of the agenda for next month. So if you have agenda items that come up over the next couple of weeks. And so we said that was May 11th.
Well, we should have an agenda. If we don't have an agenda.
Oh, no, we'll have one, but I don't have to post it, you know, I try to get it, when I'm doing, I try to get it about a week ahead, you know, get it posted. So that gives us an opportunity you can email me and say, hey, I think you should put this on the agenda. because we're not really allowed to talk about anything that's not on the agenda. So I'll do that for May 11th. I'll try to find out what's going on with Jackie. I believe Roseanne has already scheduled the room for the May meeting. But one of you needs to get the key.
I'll get the key.
Okay. So you can do that either the morning of the 11th, just stop by the downstairs. Because if we're not here before 4, we have to let ourselves in. Charlie, we get key. All right.
Charlie, where are you taking your wife out for your anniversary?
Last year we went to this Pelham House.
Where?
Pelham House?
What town is that?
I think it's either in Harwich or Dennis or so. It's supposed to be an exclusive place, and it's very pricey. But
Hand these out to your neighbors.
They had these high tables and low tables, and we got up on the top floor, and we thought we'd be more comfortable on a low table. Well, there's a bar going, it's got a view of the ocean out there, but if you sit at the low table, you can't see out. So, it was, well, anyway, it's expensive. It was okay. I'm not sure whether we'll go back or not.
My anniversary is this Sunday. We do sushi.
And where do you go for sushi?
Idaho.
Where?
It's on route, it's in 6A Yarmouth. It's called Idaho.
Idaho.
And we've been going there for 30 years. And
Really?
the guy that runs it he's Japanese trained. We have put his kids through college. And it's a very traditional Japanese restaurant.
Okay.
And that, very quiet, very calm, great food, best sushi ever. People that we know that travel the world say that sushi is as good as it gets.
Wow.
So, now, when we don't feel like going all the way to Yarmouth, we go to Bluefin in Chatham. Now, Bluefin on Main Street in Chatham has great sushi, but it's not traditional. I mean, it's more of a fusion restaurant, it's very modern and rock, loud music and, young people and,
Yeah.
different atmosphere. Good, but,
What's the name of the one that's across the street from Hot Stove?
oh, that 10 yen,
Three Monkeys?
Three Monkeys, yeah, it used to be 10 yen. 10 yen
Okay.
moved to Orleans, now it's Three Monkeys. We had gone when it was 10 yen. I
Okay.
haven't been to 10 yen now that they've moved to Orleans, so I don't know. And I have not been to Three Monkeys.
It's very loud. It seems like a lot of young kids and tourists in there.
Right.
Because my wife and I, sometimes we find something that's just comfort food. I find that Hot Stove's got comfort food.
Yeah.
Both her and